Hello and welcome, I was going to say, to the studio here in Northumberland, but today this one's a little bit different, so welcome to my garden. Now, isn't that pretty? Now, quite often you will see things every day and don't realise that it could actually make a painting. So I'm going to show you here, I'm at a slight angle from that shed and the trees behind it. And that's what I'm actually going to paint. Yes, there's a fairly nasty looking old porter cabin building behind it, but I'm just going to ignore that. And this will show you as well what you can leave out and what you can put into a painting to make it into a painting. So I'm going to start off with my drawing, and it's just the old building there. Actually, it's not a really old building, that one. That's my newest shed. That's where my little sit-on lawnmower lives. A bit of that there. You notice that line's going down slightly, going downwards. Then I've got the other roof, like so. And the sides of the building. I apologise in advance because you are going to hear some tractors and background noise, but hey, that's the beauty of being outdoors. You've even got Bert wandering around doing dog-like things. That's the door open. Downward slightly there. And the other door is closed, or semi-closed. So you can just see a bit of the inside of the building there. And the wind blowing in the trees. Isn't it typical when I get outdoors the wind decides to pick up? There, that's my building done. Very simple. I'm not going to start drawing planks. I shall give the impression of those when I put the paint on. A bit of grass underneath it. Sorry, grass. And there's the ramp that the lawnmower goes up. Behind that, I've got a hedge. And a bit down here, a couple of pots there. Just makes it look a bit more rustic. There's another one actually. And I actually propped that door open. You probably can't see it. I propped that door open with a spade or a fork, but I'm just going to lean that against there instead. And then from here, I've got some trees coming out. As I said, I'm missing out that old building, that old porter cabin thing behind it. Like so. And these trees are partially in foliage because it's spring. But I'm going to put a lot more foliage on. And there's some big bits coming up there. I'm not drawing every twig because, like I've just said, I'm going to put it in full foliage. Therefore, if I start drawing loads of twigs, I've just wasted my time because I'll be covering them all up when I put the foliage in. Here's a fir tree behind there. Actually, I'll let you into a little secret. That big old fir tree there, it must be 30 feet tall. Well, that was my first ever Christmas tree when I moved into my house about 30 years ago. And it was in a pot with roots. And now, look at the size of it. I'm quite proud of that tree actually. Little things please me. I'll make that look more like a fir tree when I put the foliage on. And behind that, I've got even more trees. And that's a big sycamore behind it. And that was part of the hedge. And I used to cut all that hedge. These were in my starving artist days. And I used to use a pair of hand shears and cut that hedge. And one particular year, there was a bit that was a bit thick, so I just let it grow. And that's now that sycamore tree. I have quite a lot of history in this place. Behind here, I've got a fence coming out. I'm pressing on a little bit harder with my pencil than I would ordinarily, so that you can still see the drawing. Because it's fairly strong light out here. And nearly done with that. There's the big fence post. Gate post actually. And some more grasses. And the rest in this foreground here is going to be about shadow. So actually, shall I put the wall in? Yes, go on, I'll put that wall in. That's the wall of my drive. Bert's having a mad moment to himself, running around the field. I did put my palette down on the grass next to the easel, and of course within 5 minutes I had to wipe yellow ochre off Bert's nose. He just can't resist. And where the car is, I'm going to put a bush in. And that will more or less do. Drawing done. Now Bert's taken up position, ready for me to start painting. So I shall start painting. And what I'm going to do to start with is the sky wash, obviously. And because I've got so much, I'm going to have so much foliage in this painting, there's not a lot of sky wash going to be showing. But don't start going around trees, because remember, when you leave gaps in your foliage, you need to see sky colour through those gaps, not big clumps of white paper. So go all the way through. There. And I'm just going to use ultramarine blue, plenty of water into it, but just ultramarine blue. You enjoying yourself, Albert? Honestly, I have 2 black Labradors, and they're both as mad as each other. Frank's decided that he doesn't want to sit out in the sun, so he's stayed indoors. Just ultramarine blue there, look. Coming down. Always remember it's going to dry nearly 50% light, well, about 30% lighter than when I put it on. So allow for that. Wash out, squeeze out, and there really aren't any clouds. So I'm going to leave it as it is. Or shall I have one cloud? Yeah, let's have one cloud, just there. Just a cloud there, that'll do. Very, very simple. Don't fiddle, don't mess, and just let it dry. It's kind of nearly dry. A little bit of wind is helping to dry it as well, but it's not totally dry. So I'm going to start off in the background with a little bit of ultramarine blue and light red. I'm just going to drop that wall in there. Now, just with a clean damp brush, stroke that down. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. A bit there, a bit there. Now, I'm just going to take a little bit of paint off the top. Let's get more light on that. That'll do. Now it's time for the shed. And we've got a lot of shadow in there, so I'm going to expose a little bit more of the shed. I've got yellow ochre, and into the yellow ochre I'm going to put a little bit of Charles Evans sand. Now the sand isn't just for painting beaches or painting as a colour by itself, it's also a good lightener. Now by putting that sand into the yellow ochre, I've almost made Naples yellow. It's a good mixing colour, the sand. So we'll have a little bit of that in here. And just a little bit there. Now, raw umber with a touch of yellow ochre mixed into it. There's my raw umber, and a bit of yellow ochre into the raw umber. Plenty of water into that. I'm doing this with my round brush, my number 8 round. Remember the brushes, Aquafine brushes, Daler-Rowney Aquafine. Fabulous brushes because they'll hold so much water. Look at that. That's just one dip of the paint. And I've filled in the side of the shed with one dip. That brush is about £2.50 on my website. Here comes the tractor. I told you you'd hear the outdoor noises. Now a little bit darker with the raw umber. So this time, look, I'm using raw umber just by itself. You can see the difference in tone there. Put that in there. Leave a little bit of gap. Just there. A tiny touch of paper showing through there, just to signify where the end of the door is, because that one's closed. And back to the lighter mix for the inside of that door. Of course that doesn't get any weather. And just fill in. Again, just one dip of that brush, look. Now I need to let that dry before I put the roof bit on and finish off the actual shed. But as I'm saying that, I'm just thinking I can paint the indoors of the shed, which again, raw umber. See what a useful colour raw umber is. If I put a touch of blue into it now, I've got a sepia. Bit more raw umber. There, see? Lovely dark brown sepia. I'm just going to fill that in there. The inside of the shed. There'll be a lot more darker paint on that later, once it's totally dried. But basically, that's my washers on the shed. Now if I let that dry totally, I'll then go in and put as much detail as I want into it. Now, that's all good and dry. So I'm going in with my rigger brush, again, Aquafine, number 4 rigger brush, and a little bit of detail into this shed. So just a few broken lines going in. You don't need to paint every plank, just give the impression of them, like so. So wonderful to be outdoors. And for those people that watch this video in 2 or 3 years from now and wonder why I'm painting my own garden, it's because I like painting out on location, but these days we can't because of the COVID-19 lockdown. Hopefully it will end soon. There's a few lines there. And on the front of the shed, on the door, the lines come downwards. Likewise there. Wiggly. You don't need perfect straight lines. Now, in that door as well, I've got I've no idea what they are. They're crisscross bits. There's another one there. And a little bit on the edge. Now, with a little bit of black, of course don't use manufactured black, make it. There's a bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of burnt sienna. Yeah. A bit more water, there we go. That's just for the hinges then. Another one there. Bert's found himself a very, very nice stick. Now within the door of the shed, that bit of open door there, again black, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I've changed to my number 8 round brush again. I'm just going to have a diagonal line for shadow there. Bring that down there. Now into the black, I'm going to put a little bit of alizarin crimson. And that will do for the shadow underneath the roof. I'm talking about the roof that I haven't painted yet. There's not a reason for that, it's because I forgot. a little bit more water into there. Bring that down there. I'll actually paint the roof now. A little bit of ultramarine blue and light red, and that's just going on there. Now with a little bit more water into that shadow mix, I'm going to give this shed a little bit of age. Just a few daubs here and there, look. Now, from that mess, clean damp brush, stipple on. And a bit there. Just roughing it up a bit, really. That'll do. Shed done.
Bertie, come here. Come here. Boy, sit. Sit. Good boy.
Okay, back to my rigger brush now, and I'm starting off with a little bit of yellow ochre. Plenty of water into it. And this is to start the trees behind the shed. And there's quite a few bits of trees here. Whack them on there. Whack, that's your technical term. Bits coming out here. And we've got another one there. Goes to the edge there and then reappears there. And a bit more yellow ochre. I'm kind of like going through the fence here and there. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be darker anyway. The fence is going to be a lot darker. And we're going to have some yellow ochre on that one as well. Just dance the rigger brush around on the paper. Now, raw umber with blue into it. Raw umber, touch of ultramarine blue. There, a very, very dark sepia, that one. And that's going to the other side of where I've put the yellow ochre. Just leaving a little bit of yellow ochre showing through here and there as well. The big tree, just to the side of me here, the very big tree at the corner of my land, that's quite a rare tree. It's a black poplar, and apparently that tree is the oldest, the most ancient thing in the village. And my house is about 250 years old, so how old is he? And every year it keeps coming out in foliage and I breathe a sigh of relief. I love trees. And I'm just more of the same here. At this point, this would be a good editing point, and you'd carry on watching the video and suddenly I would have finished all the bark on the trees. But I don't like doing that. I like everybody to see every brush stroke. That's why my videos are so long and boring. Hello? I love trees, love painting trees. A few more bits here. And we'll have a few twigs coming out here from the sides. And this is why I didn't draw them all as well, because if you draw every single twig, you end up trying to stick to all of those pencil lines. Get a bit of free flow going to it, invent some twigs. A bit more life into it. There. Now, still with the trees, but you would imagine now that I'm going to put full foliage on here that I would start and go to a small brush and start and paint leaves. Don't go there. Give the impression of a canopy of foliage. So I've changed to my 3/4 inch flat wash brush. Again, Aquafine. I think this one's about £4 or £4.50 or something. I don't know. Now, a little bit of yellow ochre. On like so. Quite strong, this yellow ochre. And what I'm doing to start with, as I said, I'm going to put it in full foliage more than is actually there, because it's springtime. I don't want them too sparse with foliage. So what I'm doing, split my 3/4 inch brush. Don't worry about that, it'll go back to shape. A bit of yellow ochre, look. Stippling on. There's all kinds of fancy brushes for doing this kind of thing. There's a different brush for every different blade of grass in the landscape these days. You can get it all with a 3/4 inch flat brush. They're lovely brushes. Now, hooker's green and yellow ochre. Remember, the hooker's green, never use it by itself, always mix it, use it as a mixer. It's a fabulous mixing green. A lot of yellow ochre into there. By itself, it's a totally unnatural colour, but as a mixer, it's fabulous. Plenty of water there, and now again, split my brush. Going through the big fir tree for the time being. Down here. Someone had the audacity to walk down the side lane there. That's why Bert's barking. Because of course, as we know, Bert owns every bit of land around here. According to Bert. Now, a little bit of blue. Just ultramarine blue again, same blue as the sky. Split the brush again. Now, whilst I'm in with that split brush technique, I'm just going to do the hedge that's at the back of the shed as well. Now my green this time is going to be a little bit darker, so it's hooker's green and burnt sienna. Basically, you can use every colour you've got in your palette to mix with hooker's green, and it will give you lots of lovely different greens. It solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. A lot of people have a problem mixing different greens. Just use your hooker's green. Split that brush. And you see, that's giving me a totally different green. Now that brush that I've just knocked hell out of, if I wash it out, it goes straight back to shape. So now I can carefully paint around there. And around my handle of the fork. Or with a big brush, look. Now, a little bit of blue into that. Give more depth down the base there. And this also helps, that lovely dark colour also helps to push the shed further forward. And now I shall let that dry before I do the big fir tree in the middle of all that lot. Okay. Now, just through the fence there, I can see the gravel on the drive. I'm not being that pedantic about wanting to paint every little thing in, but that's quite a space there in between. I don't want to leave it white, so I'm actually going to paint that bit of gravel in there like so. And I've got ultramarine blue and light red for that. A bit there and a little bit through there. And I'm going around the cross members of the fence. Which, as I say, with a flat, sharp wash brush, very easy to do that. Now I want a little bit more greenery at the base of the shed and through that area there as well. So again, a little bit of yellow ochre and hooker's green. Split brush. I'm just going to slip along there, look. I'm not bothered about the fence bits and that up there. I'll show you a little trick in a minute. I'll have a little bit of blue as well with my round brush. A little bit there, which again just edges the side of the shed. There's horses neighing and dogs barking and everything going on here. You can tell I'm outdoors. Now, time for that big fir tree. And what I'm doing, I've got raw umber again, with quite a bit of blue into it. There, like so. A nice dark colour that. There. Raw umber and blue. I'm still with my 3/4 inch flat. I'm just going to use the sharp of the brush to tap on like so and come down through all that lot there. Getting a little bit thicker as it comes to the bottom. All with a big brush. Now I've got a few fairly straight twigs coming off here. Again, like I say, all with the big brush. Now, to really, actually I'll have a little bit more of that just down the bottom. Still with the big brush. really strong mix of green now. And what I've got here is hooker's green, burnt sienna. The paints I'm using, by the way, are Aquafine Watercolour, Daler-Rowney Aquafine. And these, strictly speaking, are students' quality paint. But you can see the depth of colour that you can get out of them. Fabulous paints, especially for students' quality. A little bit of water into that. And if you look at that fir tree, it's really dark in the foliage. We'll start off here. Coming up, stippling on there, look, with the corner of the brush. And as I come further down, stipple and leave bits where you can see through it as well. And getting wider as it comes down to the bottom. And that's where the light of those trees behind really tells. There, how easy is that? A few more little bits and pieces here and there. Now, I told you I'd show you a little trick about the fence, because I painted through that, look. It's never a problem. Watercolours has got this reputation of being the most difficult medium, because if you make a mistake, you can't put it right. It's nonsense, wash it out. Look, it's going in there, and you can see it's starting to move already. I mean, to be honest, I don't really need to reveal any light on that, because it's going to be very dark down there, but I'm just showing you. There's another one there. See, wash out. A little bit more out there. And you can keep going in as many times as you want to get as much paint out as you want. We've got a fence post in there as well. And there. See, I can take out. Now, with my round brush, I've got a little bit of yellow ochre to start with. Just a few touches here and there. A little bit there. Now, just about black. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. All I'm doing, fill in the rest of the fence with that. All the way across. You notice I'm leaving a little bit of the white paper showing through, just here and there. A bit more black there. Now for the ramp in front of the shed. A little bit of Charles Evans sand and a tiny touch of raw umber into it. There. And I've got those bins at the side. I shall have one just blue, ultramarine blue. Use any colours you like. Have them standing out or don't. I'll have one standing out. So I'll have a little bit of blue there. And on the other one, I'll have it red. How did you know I was going to say red? A bit of red there. Now I'm going to have a little bit of black. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna again. A little bit on the bottom there. In between the two. But to the right hand side of that one. Now, just with a clean damp brush, I'll soften that in a little bit. There. And a little bit of that just in the top. And then the fork leaning up against them. Well, basically it's just a handle. Now I've got one little bush there, which actually isn't there, but I'm having one. Now, hooker's green, that was just yellow ochre. Now hooker's green and burnt sienna again. Split the brush. And to unsplit the brush just by dipping it in water again, and then carefully around that fence post. Now all that's left is a load of grass in the foreground. Now, time to get this grass out of the way. And I'm starting off with some yellow ochre, plenty of water into it. And it's just big strokes, this, with my 3/4 inch wash brush. A few bits here, a few bits down here. Now, hooker's green and yellow ochre, a lot of yellow ochre into it. Plenty of water into it. Actually, a little bit more green. That's better. Carefully around my ramp. A little bit there. Incidentally, no flies have landed today. Because normally what happens when you're out on location, the minute you get that big sky area wet, that's when the flies land. And afterwards they become birds. But none landed today. A bit more of that down here. Now that needs to dry a little bit before I put the shadows in. There's quite a bit of shadow going in this one as well. A few flicky bits there. now, as I said, I'll let that dry before shadow time. Now, whilst this is drying, I was just standing back looking at this, and what would really help the composition of this, that's all a bit blank there. I'm going to put a dysentery in foliage there, just to help the composition slightly. So I've got, again, hooker's green and burnt sienna. But as I said, it is distant, so I'm putting plenty of water into that. All I'm doing, look, just tap on with the side of my number 8 round brush, like so. Take it through there a little bit, and there a little bit, leaving the hedge stronger in the foreground. Now, with a little bit of blue, just blue, ultramarine blue, a little bit of that in there, on top of the green, then it doesn't come out just bright blue. Now with the point of my round brush, still with that blue, drag down a few bits there. Now more water, just water, soften that in at the bottom, so it goes behind the hedge. There, that just fills in that. I like that better now. Finally, a bit of shadow. And if you look at that past Bert, it's quite a lot of shadow. In fact, that whole area is really dark now. The sun's moved round while I've been doing this. I'm not going to have it as dark as that, or as totally shadowed as that. So, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and a bit of burnt sienna. There we go. What I'm doing, I'm going to create my shadow here, darker down here, in there. And now start and bring that across. As I'm going, I'm softening out slightly with a little bit more water. A little bit up into the shed. And some down here. A little bit more there. And we'll have some from these posts here. And just dab on. I've decided I'm going to have more there. And that will more or less do. Actually, a little bit down there. Shadow from something. Another tree out of shot. It can be a shadow from whatever you want. Now all I need to do is take the tape off. And there you go, finished painting. Just goes to show you how you can make something out of nothing. And in these times when you can't really go out that much, paint your garden. The brushes I used, as I said, Aquafine brushes. And that set, well, I have the same set that I also paint my acrylics in. So they're very hard wearing brushes. You can give them some hammer, as you've seen with that 3/4 inch. I was splitting it all the time. I only use 4 brushes all the time. Likewise with the colours, I only carry 8 colours that I use all the time. But these are the Aquafine paints, strictly speaking students' quality paints. And those, such lovely strong colours. And to be honest, they're for nothing. They're about £1.80 a tube from my website. For all lots of tips on the trees and all the colour mixes that I'm using all of the time, it's all in this. It's only a little book, Charles Evans Pocket Book for Watercolour Artists. And there's over, as it says on the front, there's over 100 tips in there for watercolours. But it's all going on. All the mixes, all the colours that I use, some stage by stage projects, it's all in there. Look, there's the mixes that I'm using. There's all the mixes from Just Greens, from the Hooker's Green. It's all going on in that book. A very handy little book. So get out there, paint your gardens and enjoy it. And I'll see you again soon. Thank you.